Hi, I'm Sandra Joseph. Today my guest is Loanne Mayer, the author of the new book, Celestial Conversations, Healing Relationships After Death. Welcome, Loanne.
Thank you.
Loanne, tell me first about the origin of these celestial conversations.
Well, the celestial conversations I had with my mother started in 2005, January 2005. And I called them at the time journaling, which it is. I didn't know at the time it was actually transpersonal journaling, which I never heard of, I thought. But I found out later that I did hear of it, and I did write it in the journals. But the whole purpose was to find a way to connect with my mother after she had passed. And I was journaling with the intention of connecting with her because I knew people could do that. I just wasn't sure I could do it. And my mother was not a very conversant person, so I was thinking maybe even if I could, she couldn't. But it turned out that it was the beginning of letter writing back and forth between my mom and me. For my purpose, it was to find out what happened to our relationship and why we had such a tough time connecting. And for her purpose was to explain to me what the impediments were to our relationship from her perspective, now that she had passed through the veil to the other side. But I knew that people had done this. I knew that there was a way to reach the other side. I just wasn't sure how it would work. But I'm a hospice volunteer, and I was trained in hospice. And one of my hospice friends said to me, "You might consider journaling, since this is disturbing you so much that you haven't finished your conversation with your mother. Why don't you journal about it?" So in the process of getting a journal and sitting down and thinking, how am I going to do this? I don't want to just talk about my feelings. I want to get rid of some of the angst that I had. So I wrote a letter to my mother. And that was it. I just sat and wrote a letter, put it back, the journal back on the coffee table, and thought, if she's willing to write, and she was a writer, I will try this again tomorrow and see what happens. But I had this routine that I developed. It was a routine of prayer, meditation, and then writing. So I wanted to get myself into this place where I was totally focused on the intention of connecting with my mother, and not just rambling about my particular experience or my lack of understanding or my negative feelings about our relationship. I wanted to clear the deck. And so the idea came from people before me, as there's nothing new under the sun, you know that, Sandra. And the idea that I had a very clear intention of healing the situation. I just wasn't sure it would work. So it was very revealing. The first day I knew exactly, oh my goodness, we have something special going on here, and I couldn't wait to do it again. But I didn't tell anybody, because I didn't want anyone to tell me it wasn't possible. So it was very special. I think it was like 5 months before I ever told anybody what I was doing. But in that process, people were, saying to me, you seem a little lighter, you seem a little less stressed. And I had every good reason to be as stressed as I was in January. But it was peeling the onions of the things that were bugging me about what our relationship was like before she died. It was very powerful for me. But too powerful for me to let anybody else in on the secret.
Yes.
So
when you revealed what you had been doing, did you tell your family? Did you tell...
I told my husband, but he was particularly happy because he knew that we had this very difficult relationship before she died, and he was a part of that. And it really weighed heavily on me, in addition to other things that were going on in the family. As a person who was known as a healing person, not to be able to reach to your mother and find a healing situation before she died was really very challenging for me. I was so excited when we were able to do this, and I asked her about everything that had to do with the difficulty of her communicating and the difficulty of her understanding me as her only daughter, and yet not being able to tell me anything that was going on in her life. I felt like I had the greatest gift, and I needed those gifts from her, not from her sister, not from the doctor, not from her priest. I needed to know from her, and she graciously allowed me to learn.
you said you started to feel lighter.
I did. Mm-hmm.
How did it help you heal?
But what she was showing me was places in my life where I was making the same mistake she was. I was judgmental about this situation or that person, and she was saying, you know, I did that so well, I taught you that. So get rid of it as much as you can because I taught you wrong. And so I would start looking at myself thinking, my goodness, yes, of course I'm judging this situation or that person, and it's wasting time. There's no love there. And what she was saying is the only thing that you take with you to the other side is love. So don't waste your time doing judgment or anger or resentment. Figure out how you can let go of it. And that made me more aware of what I was doing. And it did lighten me up. Not just about my mother, not just about death, but about my life and the way I was living it.
You mentioned that the first person you shared this with was your husband, and then eventually,
well, maybe I should back up, because between the time that I shared this with my husband, only my husband, 5 months after I began this communication with my mother, our daughter Cindy died very suddenly, very tragically. And I went to my mother. The journaling continued through her death, through the process of wrapping my head around it and so forth. And it wasn't until the following Christmas, when my children had come for Christmas because Cindy had died, and we were gathering together as most families do in a grief situation, that I told the children that I was not only communicating with their grandmother, but also with their sister. And that was an amazing Christmas dinner, I have to say. Not that they were totally shocked about it, but they wanted to know. They would ask the questions that you would ask. You know, how do you know it's Grandma? How do you know that it's Cindy? How can you tell? And so all those questions that people are asking me now in the workshops were asked by my children. I found it really a wonderful experience to share with them what they were saying, because in this case they were both, it was like double teaming me with the, you know, let go of the resentment, let go of the anger, move to love. Love is the only thing that counts. And they were pounding me with that. And so by sharing that with my kids, who were also going through their own stuff, of course, it opened their eyes to a side of their grandmother and their sister that they did not know. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing.
And at some point it occurred to you that what had helped you to heal might also help others. And is that how the idea for the book first began?
It came from that particular thought process, but it didn't come from me exactly. I think I was in a workshop, and you were there, and one of my friends said to me, you really should share this with people. And I said, oh, I don't know, it's very personal. And thank God my friend said this to me, because I did mention it to the ladies who were there, and they all asked me if I was writing a book about it. Would I write a book about it? And it was the first time that it dawned on me that maybe this could work for other people. It just never occurred to me until that moment. And then later I was a member, and have been a member for many years, of Compassionate Friends. And Compassionate Friends is a wonderful organization for people who've lost children. And some of the people in Compassionate Friends asked me what I was doing, because it was clear to them that I was a little bit lighter than some of the people in the room. So I would tell them, you know, why don't you just try it? And for some it was helpful. And that's when I thought, you know what? Grief is epidemic around the world, and there's so many people who feel powerless to continue a conversation with someone that has died tragically, like our daughter, or even over a long term, like my mother had 3 years that she was fading, and people just didn't want to upset her, you know. And I have many friends that have, you know, they have a cancer situation. So this could be the sort of thing that someone could say, well, maybe I'll just ask about this, or I will inquire about that. And it's personal, it's private, it doesn't cost anything, but it meshes beautifully with grief counseling, it meshes beautifully with organizations like Compassionate Friends, but it can be private and no one need know anything about it, and you'd still benefit.
How did you come to start calling these celestial conversations?
Well, that actually came from my mother. In one of our letters, she referred to it as a celestial communication, and then my daughter in one of her first letters, said this celestial conversation that we are having. So it just lit up like neon to me, and I felt like that's what it is, and that's what we'll call it.
I'm curious about the role of faith and belief. Is it a prerequisite to the process working? Do you have to believe in something?
I don't know that you have to believe in something. I think you have to have a belief that you want to finish up or heal a relationship that got interrupted by death. Like in my case, I knew it was possible, but I always thought it was special people, people who are really psychic or perhaps saints or perhaps well trained in mediumship or something along that line. But from what I'm hearing from both my mother and my daughter, anybody can do this. And most people who have an interrupted situation, a death situation like we did, where they didn't finish their business, the person on the other side, the soul on the other side, is also usually hoping to do the same thing. I think it's so neat. I love the whole idea that there's so much we don't know, and it's all good. It's all good.
So this process can help not only heal the relationship with the person who has passed, but it can also help you heal yourself.
Right, and the trickle-down effect is that it helps those you live with and work with. And of course, when you know something that's loving and wonderful and a good tool, then you think, well, I want to give it to people who are looking for this, because I'm not the only one. In the United States alone, almost 250,000 children and young adults die every year. And to be able to finish up, and have a conversation and be at peace and bring peace back into your world, it's a wonderful thing. And if we, through our book, and I say we because I really do believe I'm working with my mom and my daughter, if we can make a difference and help people begin to let go of this heavy burden of grief. And it is heavy, and it's not gone by Tuesday the way some people, go back to work in 6 weeks. It doesn't work that way. It would be a great contribution to a world who is just suffering so much grief right now, all over the place.
What was your intention in writing the book?
When I finally figured out that other people could benefit from what I was doing, and that really came via the workshops. That made the commitment for me. I did them in New Jersey, and then when we were in Texas, I did them there. And as I began to see people saying, oh, this helps me, this is something that I really want to be able to do, I could see it didn't matter whether they were men or women, or whether they were young, they were old, or whatever culture they came from. The people in my workshops had no hesitancy about trying it. And then I thought, what about the other side of the world? What about these people in Africa? What about these people who have been losing their families from cancer? And the Compassionate Friends, I see these very brave, wonderful people who have lost children. And I think to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I could just say, here, try this. See if it helps. And if it doesn't help them, very often it would help somebody they know. The child or the husband or the grandmother or somebody. It's energy put out there with a loving intent that the right people will find it. And now I feel like it's sort of, as I said to you earlier, my dharma and my mission have come together. I've spent many years in the metaphysical healing world, but this to me has the most incredible potential of use of anything I've ever done in my life. And what better legacy for my mother and my daughter? Perfect. Perfect.
We've been speaking with Lo-Ann Mayer, the author of Celestial Conversations, Healing Relationships After Death. Thank you so much, Lo.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah.